Go na daw, Aaron.
Good day again, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're here with our three special guests to talk about communication and globalization. We have Miss Rosalinda Bornales, Miss Angelica Valdez, and Miss Cassandra Hasmin. Good morning, ladies. How are you?
We're
We're
fine
fine
po to
po.
boys.
Nice. So, as I said earlier, our topic for today is all about communication and globalization. So, first, I will ask our listeners, what comes to your mind when you hear the word communication and globalization? Any small idea? So, we will provide the Padlet link and then just put your answers in the Padlet. Also, includes your answers to the fast talk. So, our topic for today is all about communication and globalization. So, when we say communication, it is the imparting or exchanging of information or news. It means of sending or receiving information, such as phone lines or computers. Communications generally take place reserved for purposes such as informing, expressing feelings, imagining, influencing, and meeting social expectations. So one of the example of this is our conversation on the phone. So when we say globalization, it is the word used to describe the growing interdependence of the world's economies, cultures, and population, brought about by cross-border trade in goods and services, technology, and flows of investment, people, and information. So one of the example of this is the development of the internet, because before there was no internet to trade products and communicate with other countries. Next slide. So our topic coverage is all about communication and globalization. Second one is impacts of globalization on communication. And the last one is the impacts of globalization in global communication. Our objectives is to disseminate the definition of communication, globalization, and the connection between these two, and acknowledge the impacts of globalization and global issue to communication and vice versa. Next. Communication and globalization. While the term communication has been in existence since time immemorial, the term globalization is relatively new in our vocabulary. Also, while the term communication is generally understood by most, if not all, globalization is not. What then is globalization? Globalization is a process of interaction and integration among the people, companies, and governments of different nations, a process driven by international trade and investment and aided by information technology. So this process has effects on the environment, on culture, on political systems, on economic development and prosperity, and on human physical well-being in societies around the world. Haywood 2003 describes globalization as a slippery and elusive concept. Despite the phenomenon of globalization, since the 1980s, the term is still used to refer variously to a process, a policy, a marketing strategy, a predicament, or even an ideology. This not only refers to the tendency of traditional political borders based on national and state boundaries to become permeable. It also implies that divisions between people previously separated by time and space have become less significant and are sometimes entirely irrelevant. So, the problem with globalization is that it is not so much on it as a them. It is not a single process, but a complex of processes, sometimes overlapping and interlocking processes, but also at times contradictory and oppositional ones. It is difficult, therefore, to reduce globalization to single thing. Globalization is not really new, though. The globe has been globalized even before men coined the term globalization. For example, for thousands of years, people and later corporations have been buying from and selling to each other in lands at great distances, such as through the famed Silk Road across Central Asia that connected China and Europe during the Middle Ages. Likewise, for centuries, people and corporations have invested in enterprises in other countries. In fact, many of the features of the current wave of globalization are similar to those prevailing before the outbreak of the First World War in 1914. Next slide. But policy and technological developments of the past few decades have spurred increases in cross-border trade, investment, and migration so large that many observers believe the world has entered a qualitative new phase in its economic development. This current wave of globalization has been driven by policies that have opened economies domestically and internationally. A defining feature of globalization, therefore, is an international industrial and financial business structure. Technology has been the other principal driver of globalization. So since 1950, for example, the volume of world trade has increased by 20 times, and from just 1997 to 1999, flows of foreign investment nearly doubled from $468 billion to $827 billion. Distinguishing this current wave of globalization from earlier ones, author Thomas Friedman has said that today globalization is farther, faster, cheaper, and deeper. In the years since the Second World War, and especially during the past 2 decades, many governments have adopted free market economic systems, vastly increasing their own productive potential and creating myriad new opportunities, barriers to commerce, and have established international agreements to promote trade in goods, services, and investment. Taking advantage of new opportunities in foreign markets, corporations have built foreign factories and established production and marketing arrangements with foreign partners. Advances in information technology, particular, have dramatically transformed economic life. Information technologies have given all sorts of individual economic actors, consumers, investors, business valuable new tools for identifying and pursuing economic opportunities, including faster and more informed analysis of economic trends around the world, easy transfers of assets, and collaboration with far-flung partners. So that's all about communication and globalization. So let's move on to another topic. Now we go to the impacts of globalization on communication. Well, have here one of our special guests, Miss Rosalinda, to discuss what are the impacts of globalization in communication. Is it helpful or not? Your turn, Miss Rosalinda.
Thank you, Tito Boy. So, we have here the impacts of globalization on communication. So, they said that in an article entitled The Impact of Globalization on Communication Skills Development, David Ingram said that communication skills development has always been an important factor of success in business. But in the influence of globalization and cross-cultural interaction in a recent decade that has impacted the types of communication skills that needed in dramatic ways. It is no longer that can entrepreneurs afford to simply communicate well within their own homogeneous cultures. So, thus today, people need to understand the dynamics of long-distance collaboration, the impact of culture on manners of speaking and body language, and also how to use technology to communicate with people on the other side of the globe. So we have here the first one, we have here the virtual interactions. In interaction, they said that globalization has introduced um, they introduced virtual communication and collaboration as a major part of academic and dynamic workplace. So we need to understand their strengths and limitation in a different form of communication on media, and also to know the how to use each minimum I mean each medium to maximum effect of it. We have here the for example, we have here communicating via email and also to distant team members that it is require a certain etiquette and ones that are not necessarily required in face-to-face interaction. For example, holding a virtual meetings that it is require a similar change in approach. Um, they said that is that they have a change in approach because when we are in virtual interaction with rest in the upper part of our body, but in our down part we dressed as a as like we dress just a short or not an formal dress. Holding in virtual meetings, it is as I said earlier that it is require a similar change in approach, which people who are unaccustomed in communicating in groups and virtual setting can find themselves lost, can find themselves out of place. Also, they can find themselves confused or unable to share their input or unable to share their want their learnings and also their understanding on the topic that they've been discussed. This is why in school, language courses is trying to address the challenges of virtual interaction so that many people may aware about the virtual interaction that has a big impact of globalization and communication. So the next one, we have here the cultural awareness and speech. They said that the need for cultural awareness is a major impact of globalization on the required skill set of effective communicators. It is resulting in the evolution of communication skills development and programs also. So in the workplace and school, for example, we need the ability to catch the subtle nuances of people manners of speech when communicating across culture. We need to know their culturals, what culture they have to have a better communication with them, to have a good relationship with them. Even when two people are speaking the same language, cultural differences can affect vocabulary, colloquial expressions, voice tone, and taboo topics. Even when two people are speaking the same language, when their culture is not the same, they may have been a misunderstanding about their communication. So we have here the example for a businessman in a Japanese business culture. It can be considered rude to them to ask personal question in an initial business meeting. For example, um, ask about personal information with them about their life or about their family. It can be considered rude to them for the Japanese business. In the other hand, in a US man or a US businessman, asking personal questions and sharing personal information because this can display warmth and openness. So in US, asking personal questions about their life or anything that it is personal with that person, it is considered as warm and give a warm welcome and openness. So in that two particular culture, they have been they had a different cultural. So we must know their cultural to be aware in to be aware and also to have a good communication with them. So in American and Japanese business people who understand this about who understand this about each other can communicate in many ways or in a good way that resonate more effectively with each other. So when they know the culture of each other, when they learn or they read about the culture of each other, no, they will have a good communication. They will have a good relationship or or their communication will be better or good. So that's all.
What a beautiful discussion from our special guest, Miss Rosalinda. I hope that our listeners learned about that. And now let us hear Miss Angelica continuation about impacts of globalization on communication and to introduce a new topic coverage which is the impacts of globalization in global communication.
Thank you so much po, Tito Boy. So, for the third impact of globalization in communication is the cultural awareness and body language. Body language is an important part of communication with others. It plays a role as significant as the nuances of speech. So, body language is also known as body expression or those things that we do and how we act whenever we're communicating with other people, especially when it's face to face or personal communication. But we are taught that our body language is not accepted universally. So there we have different body language that we are expressing in different cultures we have. So yung body language natin here in the Philippines is not accepted and sometimes rejected in other countries po. So that's why having awareness on different body language and expression of different countries help us cope up with the changes brought by the globalization. So as the globalization happens, the transportation mode become more available to us, and it is much easier to travel from one place to another. That's why um, we can easily meet another people with different cultures. We can socialize with them, but we have to remember na when we're talking to them or when we're communicating to them, we must consider the culture they have in terms of the body language they use. So some examples of body language are the eye contact, gestures, facial expressions, act of greetings, and sitting position and physical contact. So this is it can be considered as the most influential part of culture in each country that it has, because it is can be seen in different actions we do. So for example, you are visiting another country, so you must study and you must know the different body language they have there in order for you to have a respect or to have a successful communication with people there. So one example of this is the curling of an index finger like this, and then that particular body language is used to beckon someone to come closer, but that body language is accepted in United States and other countries in Europe. But when you go to Asia, Southeast Asian countries such as Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand, that body language is considered as disrespect or pambabastos, because we need to remember na everything that we do in this country we have is not same as other country. They have different interpretation about that. So that specific body language is it means like pambabastos nga or parang catcalling in our country. So as what I have said earlier, um, it is important to be cultural aware that in each country we visit or in each people we have or we're communicating with, we have different culture and body language that we need to consider. Next slide, please. So for the last and final impact of globalization in communication is the time difference. It is scientifically proven that the time schedule of one country is different from others, especially when it's far from each other. So we all know na we have different time zones in other countries. So for example, it is evening in our country, but some countries they experiencing morning or our hours. So that is because of the rotation of our earth through the sun. So while our earth is rotating around the sun, um, some countries experiencing more sunlight and some are not. So communication has been greatly affected because of the adjustment we need in order to have a successful communication with other people in other country. So globalization allows us to communicate with other. Um, for example, through the use of our phone or our gadgets, we are able to communicate with other people, even his or her is far away from us. Even if he's living in other country, we're able to send messages, call them, or spend time with them through our gadgets and technology. So in order for us to know what is the exact words we need to say to them whenever we're talking to them is we have to know the difference between our time zone. So you have to know where that people is located at. So kasi there are some instances that you gonna say na good morning, ganun ganon. But in reality, that person is sleeping pa or gabi dun sa country nila. So in order for us to know what are the correct speech or what are the correct word or terms we will use in talking to them is we should know the time difference in each country. Next slide po. So it is a new topic which is the impact of globalization in global communication. So according to Nikolai Danev on 2017, he is a trained economist and a businessman. He enumerates the three major impacts of globalization on global communication and identify major problems as follows. So the first one is the availability of information. As the globalization continuously happened, the availability of information has been a major effect of it in global communication. So as the globalization happened, the progress and development also exists. So there are a lot of inventions, especially in technology, that that enable us to have a unlimited source of information. We have for example, by just clicking on your gadgets, you're able to know the situation of other countries, the news happenings in their countries, and also the important events that happening in that specific country. So even if you're not in that country, you're able to get an specific information that comes from them, So because of this, information become more available as time passed by. The innovation and progress in different countries globally provide an important role in conveying and getting the information we need. So there are a lot of mobile applications din na that are invented in other countries. So it is helpful to us, of course, because it is beneficial to us and it help us use this sometimes for free, but sometimes we need to provide um, a fee or we should pay for a premium access to it. So as the globalization happens, the innovation and the progress in terms of technology and of course the availability of information also happens.
So that's awesome. Thank you, Miss Angelica. So you are still there, our listeners. Keep listening because we're close to the exciting part. So let's have our last guest, Miss Cassandra. So what's your discussion all about, Miss Cassandra?
Thank you so much for inviting me here, Tito Boy. Today we are talking about the business conduct, social awareness, and the problem. Let's by business conduct. Globalization has influenced global communication by implementing new techniques for business conduct among workers of international corporations. One of the impacts of globalization and the global communication in business are next po. Number one, opportunity or opportunities. Technology makes it easier to hire employees that are located in other countries or by using video calls and emails you can communicate with the suppliers, workers, partners, and customers all over the world. With this kind of communication, many of business will take advantage of these opportunities in different countries. This has the effects of making everyone's operation, regardless of location, more modern and efficient. Global communication is directly affected by the globalization process and helps to expand business opportunities. Despite the fact that globalization has many advantages for international communication and trade, globalization has the unintended consequences. This includes factors such as job insecurity, price fluctuations, currency fluctuations, capital flows, and so on. The next one is fewer cultural barriers. When people from different cultures try to exchange information, the way they speak, their body language, or their mannerism may be misinterpreted by the other. So let me give you an example. You are watching some series or dramas in Thailand or in other countries. By this globalization and by watching some foreign series or movies, we are adapting and learn about the culture and language, and because of this, we are lessening the cultural barriers. Um, uh, Another example is in business, we are communicating with other workers in their countries and help us to understand each other's culture a little better. In addition, it is also help us to expand our product and our business relation without worrying about the misunderstanding and cultural barriers that may affect the transactions or partnership that we will conduct. Next, next one is social awareness. The availability of information, which is direct effect of development of global communication system, has led to increased social awareness of people across the world. So, social awareness. The people are aware about the changes caused by the globalization, which we can communicate across the world with just one tap or call at your smartphone or any gadget that you have on your home. For example, YouTube or television that allows people to watch channels broadcast in Thailand from anywhere in the world, including Russia. Information technology and networks enable them to share research, work on projects, opinions, and views. Through the use of Google Meet, emails, Zoom, Skype, Google Classroom, and other applications, many students can learn whenever they are or even they are in other countries. Next. And the last one is the problem. Despite all of the positive effects of globalization and global communication, there are a number of negative aspects that we also need to consider. Well, in spite of its quick spread and continuous development, global communication has not reached the majority of people on all countries. People, especially the ones who live away from the city, can reach the development of global communication due to lack of knowledge about the technologies. According to the World Health Organization or WHO, at least 70% of all people in Africa will not make a telephone call or use the internet in their lifetime. Globalization have a good and bad effects in global communication that we should focus on. Some culture can be affected by new technologies in a bad way. Other cultures can experience the benefits which global communication provides. And another factor why globalization have a bad effect is because of the use of some social media sites like Facebook, messengers and applications like Google Meet, Skype, and many more technologies. The face-to-face contact with each other are no longer required, and sometimes it affects our interaction and bonding in person. That's all. Thank you.
So do you have question for us? So that's all. What the next topic you have, Miss Cassandra? I'm sure our listeners learned a lot about your discussions. Thank you so much, Liz, for that wonderful discussions. Now it's your turn, listeners.
Tapos na.
Wala ka palang outro,
Sabi
Aaron.
ko, sabi ko sabihin mo thank you sa
Yung out
references eh. Hindi, outro niya